Hey, I'm Whimsy, and welcome to Nox Mortalis, a game I talked about on Twitter back when I was given the chance to playtest it. Since then, the game has had a lot of work, and I'm excited to try it out again. I'm considering making this a regular thing when it comes to demos and early playtest builds of upcoming games. I've got quite a few demos lying around on my PC, and I do plan on getting to them someday. Anyway, let's get started. I awaken in a prison cell, where I'm accosted by an Imperial guard from Morrowind. He tells me that in exchange for my freedom, someone named the Crooked Father is sending us to a remote island to kill a demon lord. Sounds reasonable enough. He gives me a magic orb and sends me on my way. Pondering the orb immediately transports me to this misty landscape with vibrant trees and a small cabin nestled into the rock. Nox Mortalis is both a dungeon crawler and a survival game. There's no real tutorial of any kind to introduce you to its systems. Instead, there's a short manual explaining how to get started. Having playtested the game before, I ignore the manual and begin collecting sticks to fashion a basic axe, before chopping down my first tree. While collecting wood, I find a nook behind the cabin containing a health potion and a bar of copper. Nice. I head back to the cabin to check out the new recipes. I can't craft everything yet because I don't have enough copper, though I can't help but notice the copper sword recipe. I may be wrong, but I don't believe there was a copper sword recipe in the playtest. I'm glad to see its inclusion. I make the rest of my wood tools and use the copper I found to make a copper key. These are used in chests deep underground. Speaking of the underground, I decide to make myself useful and head down into the depths. Inside, I find a lit bonfire, a door, and a wooden dummy. The dummy allows me to demonstrate how combat works in this game. There's this green bar that appears whenever you're holding a weapon. This bar functions as your stamina. Attacking with low stamina does very little damage, whereas waiting for it to recharge and striking with a full bar does a fair amount. You can also charge your attack for extra damage. I enter the dungeon and meet my first enemy. This slime thing. These guys are definitely new and serve as an easy introduction to combat. Things are going well. I'm mining stones, killing slimes, and breaking boxes when I'm suddenly hit with this message. My stamina recharges slower, and even at a full bar, I'm barely doing any damage. Night has fallen, and I head back to the cabin, noting how the atmosphere has radically shifted. Yeah, fuck this. The next morning I craft my stone gear and decide to go exploring. There's something about the atmosphere of this game that feels vaguely nostalgic. It almost feels like I've found a game I once played on a friend's PC. It's familiar, yet distant and obscure. I stumble upon some ruins populated by skeletons and giant spiders. I aggro the skeletons, swiftly getting my ass kicked. This gives me a chance to get acquainted with death. You see, this game has been clearly inspired by Dark Souls. When I died, I kept all of my equipment but lost my experience points. Death is meaningless when you have nothing to lose. So, I return to the ruins with a vengeance. A fun thing to note, these mobs don't respawn and don't regenerate health either. There is nothing stopping you from relentlessly beating your head against the brick wall until the brick wall breaks. I have a small nitpick with the skeletons. Their animations don't really fit them, instead looking like default animations from a Source game. A more glaring complaint is that combat feels pretty clunky. Avoiding damage can be difficult even with a timed block. My reward for all this is a crossbow and a chest I can't open. I try out my crossbow on the local wildlife and learn that the crossbow has a pitiful range. Returning to the cabin, I craft a ton of arrows and cook some of the meat I hunted. It's then that I get to witness midnight. The closest comparison I have to this feeling is that of your first night in 1.0 Minecraft. Though, instead of zombies and creepers, we have... oh no. Now fully armed and ready, I delve back into the dungeon, hoping I'll be able to find something interesting before the game tells me I'm tired again. I descend to floor 2, where I find that even though successfully blocking an attack gives you 2 times damage bonus, there is a slight delay from the overly long animation, making it really awkward to follow up with an attack. I find a copper sword in a nearby chest and immediately get the chance to try it out. The next floor has tougher mobs, but rewards you with copper veins and a homeward stone. Floor 4 is more of the same, like the caves of Morrowind. I've invoked its name twice already, I can't keep doing this. I find a short sword in a chest, practically nullifying the excitement I had for the copper sword and replacing it with murderous intent. Floor 5 looks familiar. In the playtest, this is what floor 1 looked like. I'm glad that the first 4 floors have been redone. It paces the progression much better. These caves are filled with copper, as well as skeletons that I clown on with the crossbow. My energy runs out, and I'm faced with finding the way back to the surface. Thankfully, I managed to kill all of the mobs in the room before running out, so I can loot these 2 copper chests. The first one gives me a dagger. Nice. The second one gives me an energy Oh, fuck! What was that? I think we're gonna give the dungeon a break and go back to exploring the surface. I craft a spyglass in hopes of getting a clearer picture out there, but it does very little with the fog. Eventually I find this cliffside overlooking the sea. There's a few throwing spears and an energy potion sitting here. From this vantage point, I spot a door on the other side of the bay, with what looks to be a knight and a chest. I absolutely love this kind of design, rewarding curiosity and exploration. It's getting dark out when I notice a human standing by the cliff. He looks to be an archer or a ranger. He tells me a grim story about a distant ship sailing away and taking the last of his hope with it. Okay, yeah, thanks. Anyway, I continue along the coast until I find these ruins. I see something moving immediately. Oh fuck, that was much easier than I thought it was gonna be. I find a health potion and another chest I can't open. Lastly, I enter the dungeon, where the first skeleton absolutely slaughters me. The next day, I begin hunting with my crossbow and my spears. I chase this deer through the woods, landing a spear throw on it. It starts running up this hill, getting me uncomfortably close to this ruined tower. As I run by, I notice this nook with an iron axe and an energy potion. I manage to spear the deer, which drops 6 pieces of meat. Feeling bold, I start clearing the ruins, earning me the Golem's Ring, a ring that reflects damage back at enemies. Rings are equipped by putting them in your hotbar, which does mean your hotbar space is incredibly limited. Regardless, I'm satisfied with my find. Then I find the war mace. I carefully explore the room, breaking boxes, checking doors, opening Fuck! At least it dropped iron bars. I delve deeper, making sure to kite mobs with the war mace, switching back to the sword for the spiders. It's still janky and weird, but it's a groove. I find the sleep ring, a ring that lets you sleep in beds at any time. This feels like a ring I should have gotten much earlier. The night hasn't been much of a threat so far, so sleeping has barely been a priority. I keep the ring and move on. The next room is bottlenecked, stuck on these boxes, which is great because I could just shoot them with arrows. Until I run out of arrows. Yeah, okay, that was deserved. I take this time to cook some meat, craft some gear, and go to sleep. The next morning, I awake to a skull on my doorstep. Great. It's a foggy, rainy day. YouTube compression is going to absolutely destroy this footage. I return to that dungeon. The hall's now mostly cleared out. If I'm right, they should be where I died. Oh, hey, there they are. The zombies in this game are putrid, leaving behind damaging puddles. At least they don't do the Quake thing where they get back up unless jibbed. It's around now where fighting skeletons is getting really old. Any amount of enemy variety besides skeletons and spiders would be great. Like this room, where I'm focused on the zombie, which sets me up to get jumped by the ghoul. More of this. Challenge me. Even after finding better weapons, combat hasn't exactly improved. It's only made enemies die faster. I find a secret passage behind this wall, leading me to the door that I saw from the bay. The knight is not so friendly, so I introduce him to the war mace. I end up pushing him into the sea, rewarding me with 500 experience points and a chest I can't open. The lock requires a mithril key. I probably won't be back here for a while. I begin looking around, remembering another room through the small window. I find it behind another wall. Inside is a chest containing... Oh yeah, now that's a reward. The walk back home is eerie and tense. I'm sneaking past figures in the trees. The rain extinguished the campfire, so I can't rely on the light to guide me. Why is that thing at my cabin? Holy shit. I level up, craft my gear, and go to sleep, knowing that the night can be conquered. The next day, I decide to do a little more exploring. I find this graveyard in the distance. This place is crawling with mobs. I'm jumped as soon as I step foot in there. Clearing this place out is pretty easy, aggroing mobs one at a time. I find another mimic just sitting out here in the open, too. What an asshole. It drops a mithril ingot, which is fantastic. I also find the Grim Reaper's ring, a ring that utterly breaks this game. You see, the Grim Reaper's ring removes experience loss at death, which completely removes the punishment for dying. I can now explore wherever I want for as long as I want without any concern about leveling up, because dying simply sends me back to my cabin. Dark Souls has a ring like this. It's called the Ring of Sacrifice. However, this ring can only be used once as it breaks when you die. That keeps a power like that in balance, keeping it from trivializing the game's difficulty. Inside the church, I find another knight. This one is much easier to take down, thanks to my new sword. Inside the chest, I find the rabbit's ring, increasing my movement speed. I get curious and start Skyrimming my way up the side of the mountain, getting a good view over the misty landscape below. I also learn this game has fall damage. Back at the cabin, I level up my strength and vitality before crafting as many keys as I can and setting out for that dungeon. I stop to talk to the archer once more, who's just as depressing as he was the last time. The dungeon is thankfully still empty, so I make my way back to the chest and collect the king's ring. This ring essentially allows me to skip through dungeon floors without needing to clear them. It seems kind of odd to me that all of the buffs granted by rings are simply removing entire gameplay mechanics. They feel less like buffs and more like cheat codes. I take this opportunity to go Wendigo hunting, realizing that they are actually a great source of coal. I return to that chest I couldn't open way back when I found the crossbow, earning me the Knight's Ring. This one increases melee weapon damage. There's an equivalent range damage buff ring in the game, but I don't find that for a while. I run through floor after floor of the dungeon by my cabin, stopping long enough to mine any copper or iron I find. Eventually, I make it to floor 10, where the game notifies me that a checkpoint has been made. So, I head back to the surface and level up before braving the deeper levels. Level 10 is a gloomy dungeon, giving me Daggerfall vibes in this opening room. The halls are filled with skeletons, zombies, and even knights from time to time. I keep finding chests I can't open, so I focus on mining more iron to make more keys. The next few floors are more the same. Every enemy dies incredibly quickly and poses little to no threat. The difficulty curve isn't so much a curve as it is a sharp decline. At a certain point, the player goes from barely being able to take on a single enemy to clearing out entire dungeons without a second thought, with very little in between. This happens in most RPGs. It's inevitable that the player will outlevel or outgear most areas in the game. I just didn't expect that to happen over the span of 30 minutes. I finally make it to floor 15, the atmosphere of the entire dungeon shifting to this darker, more regal appearance. There's a chest here, containing a note from the developer, thanking me for playing the demo. So that's it. The game is over, and it's only just getting started. But there's still things I missed. I go back home to the cabin and craft a bunch of keys, then return to floor 10. The first chest I open gives me a heavy crossbow, a weapon that turns the knights into a joke. It's not as effective on the skeletons, sadly. Most of the other chests contain throwing spears. Kind of a letdown, if I'm honest. With nothing left to do but explore, I set out to see what I missed in the overworld. I use that same sloped cliffside to hop over the mountains, leading me to an area I'm certain is unfinished. I find another dungeon entrance and a hut out here. This place keeps going. There's this area with a cabin on a hill in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by fog. Eventually, I get stuck in the terrain and have to homeward stone back home. In the middle of the woods, I find a chest, out of the way and easily missable. I open it and find a dagger, a common item. I think this pretty much sums up the game. I played a little more, found the hut I started in during the playtest, opened up a mithril chest and acquired the sword ring, a ring that makes all attacks charged attacks. While exploring, I get attacked by a werewolf. Sadly, it's identical to the Wendigos, animations included. The last discovery I make is this little cottage with an old woman outside. She tells me her son fell ill and passed a few nights ago. If you talk to her enough, she'll give you an apple pie that's actually just cooked meat. And that's Nox Mortalis. So, what did I think overall? I'm pretty mixed. On the one hand, I love the look and feel of this game in every respect other than combat. When it comes to combat, it's clunky and undercooked. I think nearly every ring needs to be scaled back in their buffs. As it stands, they are far too powerful, and in cases like the Grim Reaper's ring, destroy the challenge of this game. I also want to see some more enemy variety and better paced progression going forward. Less poorly animated skeletons and more interesting monsters, please. All in all, I still see a ton of potential, but many of the core elements of the game are being brought down by some of the more raw elements. I hope in the final game, some of these issues I've brought up are addressed. I did enjoy my time with this game for the most part, and even when dungeon crawling became samey and boring, I still hoped the next floor would bring a new surprise or a new challenge. For now, that's all I have to say on Nox Mortalis' demo. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe, and follow me on Twitter. I'll see you around.